And we're live. What's up, everybody? We have another 20 questions. We're back with Malkon and Rafi. You know, normally when 20 questions are done, they set it for two, maximum of two. Rafi and Malkon decided to do three. I didn't even know why until today. They just told me the reason. Last 20 questions, they were talking about solutions. And they discovered that the topic of solutions is very complicated and takes more than just 2 hours to figure out. So they decided that, you know what, let's do another full session. Let's talk about solutions. So this one is dedicated to solution. It's their third, maybe final 20 questions together, maybe not, who knows. But it's great to have you both back. Before we get started, a shout out to our Patreon visionary members. We have Trivium Energy, PTYLTD, SOG Cannabis, Max Marine, Geffen Posner, Adam Becker, Maya, Kimberly, our one and only champion member, Raja, and our one and only legendary member, Speedy Weedy, which is a weed delivery company in California. Somebody asked, why do cannabis companies seem to support us on Patreon? Look, generally speaking, people who smoke are peace-oriented people. There's a correlation of sorts, I would imagine. You know, that's fine. These are the relationships we're very happy to build. And again, that's no statement on whether someone should smoke or not. It's obviously a personal decision, but you know, they are providing a medicine to people all around the world. So I'm going to leave you guys. If you need me, you know where to find me. And oh yeah, one quick reminder, you know, whoever's here, tomorrow at 8 p.m. Jerusalem time, I'm going to be speaking one-on-one with Professor Norman Finkelstein. I'm very excited for this conversation. Who knows how it'll go, but tune in to check that one out. And yeah, Rafi and Malkon, enjoy.
Hello, Malkon.
Thank you. Hey, Rafi. What's up?
Doing well, thank God. So where were we? Shall we continue with the list? We had 3 questions left as of last time. And we also had in between, we started debating the issue of settlements, and we got into a long debate for days over that. So we can detour. Do you want to start with one of the questions that we had on our list? Let's do that.
Yeah, let's start with the questions. Maybe we'll finish them, and if we have time, maybe we'll talk about settlements if you want.
Sure. Okay, so our next question on our list, just remind us where we were. Our last question was we talked about where we stood on BDS, what we thought about that. And now a continuation, we're going to talk about what can you say about the language that you have learned to use when talking about the conflict, and how has it changed? So over time, as you've been dealing with peace activism, how has your vocabulary changed? How do you phrase things?
Would you phrase the question? What do you mean? How did it evolve? As in how?
Yeah, how does your the way you speak about the conflict, has it changed over time? Are you still using the same rhetoric you used 5 years ago when you thought about the conflict, or as getting more involved in peace activism opened your mind in terms of how you talk to different people specifically? You know, if you're talking to a Palestinian, or you're talking to an Israeli, or a settler, or an American Jew, or various groups, how do you feel that this learning more about the conflict has shaped how you talk about it?
Yes. In a way, the question answers itself. But yeah, the question, did it develop? Yes. Depending on the people, the culture, the background. So usually it's, for example, if I speak with Israelis, like an average Israeli, I would slow down using words such as occupation, because they would be very blocked. Suddenly they can't hear anymore. If I'm speaking to a foreigner, I would use it maybe faster. Yeah, so depending on the situation. Definitely, sometimes I used to just share a bit of history. I was ignorant of the conflict growing up, except experientially. I was not able to communicate what's really 1948. 1967. I didn't know. But yeah, technically, when I started learning, developing knowledge, then also things I start adopting things I'm reading, and then expanding. I thought about what I'm adopting in my lingo, and I changed some, change a lot depending on the context. Even I'm a Christian, so even in Christian context, I use a lot of different lingo because Christians can have different, really understanding of such language and justice related stuff. Because some Christians believe we shouldn't intervene in politics, and so it's really intricate. It's really difficult, but yeah, it's been an involvement. It's been something that I developed. Yes, with different people groups. Sometimes I was sharper when I at times, but I also had times when I was more kind. So kindness was the most thing that I was trying to develop throughout my language. And take your time, Rafi, if you
Sure, sure. Oh, you want me to answer?
know. Yeah,
So yeah,
please.
I agree with that. I feel like empathy. Empathy is the and tailoring your language to the viewers. Like, so I would be when I'm talking to Israelis. And normally, I don't mind using the term West Bank. Like, I don't care. I'll use occupation or all sorts of things that are triggering to my fellow Israelis, and I'll try to find ways. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's Judea and Samaria for you, or I'll use the term settlers, and someone who's like, no, 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 they're residents of the West Bank. I'm like, I know that. Like, I'm not in favor of like expelling them, but I'd like for him it's triggering, and for me it's just like talking.
Right.
So I've got to be sensitive, and also like using the term Arab versus Palestinian. Like, I was one of the first people I know who would say Palestinian. Everyone would say, no, they're Arabs. They're not. They're not Palestinians. They're Arabs. And then so I was trying to specifically point out that the Palestinians is like a distinct identity, and to have respect for their sense of belonging. And then over time, I started doing a lot of research on Arab history in the land, how like the oldest Arabic inscriptions are from the Levant, from Syria, and from Jordan. There are Arab people here from thousands of years ago. So so I started more appreciating Arab connection to the culture, even thousands of years ago. So I would start saying Arabs again as like, because I'm not saying they're not from here. I'm recognizing Arab culture is native to this land also. And then another Palestinian would point out, no, we're not Arabs. We're Palestinians. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot. This is still a thing for you. Like, okay, yes, you're Palestinian. I get it. So it's a constant reminder when you're dealing with people what they're going to be sensitive to you, and they're not going through the same process that you are in terms of how your philosophy is evolving. So yeah, so I've developed it, and I've learned how to sort of read the person I'm talking to see where they're holding. I feel like
Amazing.
thank you. Our next one is, what do you think your side could have done better to help avoid the conflict?
What could have my side done better?
Mama Tishi.
Surrender. um, if we start from the origin, which is unfair to say they should have done it better, but that's the people that they were. Like from the 30s, they could have dealt more with the British colonization. Amin al-Husseini and others could have not, just used a lingo of them versus us, rather expose it more internationally in a more articulate way. But we didn't have this layer of people much here back in the 30s who were in Jerusalem. And of course, there was always individuals. But yeah, they dealt with it more or less from a place of as if we're stronger, as if we can defend ourselves, as if, although it's natural, some see it as a healthy reaction human reaction, and not to think we're weak, of course, but to realize who's weaker, stronger, military-wise, who's with who, and okay, then go wisely with that instead of just, um, the revolution was a good step of 1936 until 1939, but surrounding us, the approach, the lingo, the attitudes um,
Should
of,
they have been more sympathetic, maybe?
sorry?
Should they have been sympathetic to the plight of the Jews, to who are suffering various persecutions and wanting to come here, and found a way to be, welcoming in a way that was, without surrendering, saying, we see that you're suffering, and we want to help you have a home here, but you need to do so in a moral and ethical way, and you can't come here and try to connect human to human.
Yeah. You're suggesting that this would have been also something better?
That I would
You
think
asked.
from your side. I mean, I could say I'll mention what I think my side should have done better. Obviously.
Yeah. No. I'm hearing you. I'm speaking before, though, the Holocaust. Like
Okay.
during, like 20s, the Balfour Declaration, the Ottomans
But
leaving here. It's
the
way
Jews
before the
also
Holocaust in many ways.
the Jews also were being persecuted even in the 20s. And for example, like my family was in the Russian Empire. There was a pogrom in like 1906 to 1908. They killed several thousand Jews in Poland and in the Russian Empire, and
Right.
right, and a lot of them fled to America, and a small number fled here. So they were, this was sort of the impetus. The Zionists wanted to leave Europe because they were afraid they were going to be killed, which ultimately happened. It took, what the Holocaust was sort of the grand finale of a series of ethnic cleansings that were going on. There was several smaller ones that had gone before it. So they were most of the waves, except for the earliest group in like the late 1800s. Most of the waves of Zionism were people fleeing some sort of persecution. It's really
I hear you. I'm thinking if my people would have done better to avoid the conflict if they thought more sympathetically. There's always a place for sympathy. However, that's not how the way, unfortunately, Zionists portrayed themselves. So it was not really helping to say we needed to sympathize more, although it's always, as I said, the place for sympathy. Um, I don't think that's a major thing that my people could have done better to avoid a conflict. Zionists did not come as victims of oppression to run and flee. I respect if this is how you believe it. We don't see it this way as Palestinians.
I
The
understand.
colony, and it's a movement of taking over land. Zionism was seen as the biggest anti-Semitic move in the early 1900s because it wanted to remove Jews from Europe, and that was anti-Semitism at the time, rather than integrating them into Europe. However, anti-Semitism always changes its definition, like Norman Finkelstein, that Adar is meeting. He writes about the industry of the Holocaust. He writes about the definitions, the new Semitism every few, almost decades that come up as, unfortunately, abuse towards keeping Israel or establishing Israel or justifying the crimes of Israel. So, no, I don't think the main thing that would have avoided the conflict is sympathy with the Jewish suffering. Unfortunately to say, although definitely there's always a great place for that. The Jews were not a victim, and that's one of the dichotomies. And I don't believe in this mentality that the Jewish people were a victim coming to Palestine, mainly coming to Palestine because they're victims. Unfortunately, some of them might have, but the movement did not carry the vibe of stuff. Oh, we're stuff. Please help us. Please
I
embrace us.
agree.
No, Otherwise, no, we're coming, taking over. It's a land without people to people without land. We're deleting your existence. They're coming with the Shomer. They had the weapons back in the 20s, coming already, putting crossroads in between the Palestinian villages before anything to do with any Palestinian reaction, which Israelis call today massacre, and vice versa, Jewish reaction to Palestinians, which we call also massacres. Um, Funny terms, because if you attack somebody and they attack you back and you both are being killed, it's called battle, not massacre. But anyway, it's now it's an argument. But in short, that wouldn't have. I think if we read the political situation, the Western intervention, if we were like kind of reading in that enough, kind of intellectually with the right leader who would lead us, okay, what do we do here to expose that internationally, bring enough power to stop it? Yes, I think that would have been something that we could have done better, way better than this. Oh, even the Arabs saying, oh, the Jews will not stay here. All this, that's hypocritical thing that we still have in our culture. Oh, we can fight them, we can win, we can this. Like a child who thinks he can fight somebody and just win. Like there's no, the lack of planning, what we call in history Arab stupidity. So less of Arab stupidity, political planning, strategic planning. Yes, this might have avoided, not the conflict, might have avoided the establishment of a colony, but it would not have avoided a conflict. The Jews did not have anything in their mind, with all due respect, not all the Jews, I mean the movement of Zion, did not have anything in mind other than a conflict, because they deleted our existence. They didn't address our existence with, okay, how do we deal with the Palestinians? Now, let's transfer them. So that Zionism never said, let's integrate them in a way, in peaceful way, if they are peaceful, if that. Although some practicalities happened in 1940 in the war itself, but in general, that was not part of the plan, that was not part of the vision. And so the plan itself was exclusive, excluding, was kicking people out. It was nothing to do with solving conflict. It was a conflict of itself. Zionism to us is the conflict. How did we react to the conflict is, I think, if we have avoided, kind of had more planning, less kind of the traditional violent reaction, and be just more non-violent, peaceful, or who believe. But how could I expect this of Palestinians in 1936 and 1920? Why? Like, it's too much on them. Like, we're still developing now in the very some new generation understanding what is peace. 2,000 years after, for us, even Christians, after Jesus has come. So what is, how do you, today, if our neighbor slaps us on the cheek, the first thing we do is slap back. So we're still, even as Christians, it's okay, Jesus, love your enemies, and I'm not saying don't defend yourself. I'm saying it metaphorically, the slapping, not literally. So right. Slap back means taking revenge. I'm not saying in the in the same moment what do you do. We're very underdeveloped. The human race is so underdeveloped. And I'm not justifying Palestinians, but I'm just saying, how would I expect the Palestinians to be right? Already Gandhi. Okay, in India, there was an intellectual who had also roots. I'm sorry, I'm going long with this answer, but I think it's vital. Gandhi had roots, and Indians have roots in Buddhism and so many other things. Palestinians are majority Muslims. Also, they're not. So also the response is different. Actually, protecting yourself or self-defense is very similar to Judaism. Is holy, even as the word revenge can be used as holy. And this is the concept of martyrdom. This is the concept of etc. I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm saying those are the concepts that the Palestinian people are. Suddenly we're gonna find an angel here. Suddenly, let's be like the most civilized people responding to an oppressor. But yes, if we took the time and studied what's happening, this would have avoided the establishment of a bigger conflict of the colony, and would have maybe created Palestine that was inclusive of all Jews, and like the Arab states suggested in 1947 as a response to the main committee that was deciding for Palestine, what did not include any Arab states, and the Arab states responded to it by saying, let's have a first democratic ever Arab state, which has equal rights to everybody, including the minority Jews. And they said, oh, the committee said, oh, oh no, it's too radical suggestion. And this would have been an ideal. We as Arabs would have at least dreamed of democracy, would have started at least trying to practice it.
Turkey and Iran. Turkey and Iran, I think, were the two countries who supported a federal solution, that I'm aware of.
Who? Sorry.
Turkey and Iran. There was a committee for Palestine for what to do. That the majority proposal was for 2 states. The UN Resolution 181 was based around the same borders. They had a proposal to make a federal state. That would be one country made up of these 6 regions, basically, in a federal region in Jerusalem, and that was by Turkey and Iran were supporting of that. They randomly they seem to be the most reasonable. You don't see that from them today necessarily, but their ideas, I thought, were.
Yeah, they rejected what the Special Committee for Palestine suggested. They rejected the partition. They said, let's have Palestine, which is democratic. Anyway, please go ahead.
Okay, so we're talking about what we think we should have done. So I think I'm going to talk about what my side should have done. I think my side should have stuck to the vision of Zionism that was sort of embodied in the Balfour Declaration of creating a homeland for Jews in Palestine on condition that everyone had equality, having a democratic state, as you would say here, without any sort of population transfer or any kind of discrimination, any of these sort of ideas. And you have some vague ideas from Herzl, from the earlier Zionists prior to them actually getting here, that were leaning in this direction, leaning into more integrating the population into finding a way to live together. But then you have, starting in shortly after the Balfour Declaration, you have a statement from Winston Churchill in about 1920, shortly before the first, what you call massacre, the first conflict, first violence between the Jews and the Palestinians, saying that the Zionists were pressuring him to do a population transfer. And they made a proposal called the Peel Commission. The Peel Commission was a very small area of land, north of Tel Aviv to the south of Haifa, a little area off the coast. And they would give this to the Zionists. But they said that they would transfer some population out of this area. And this is what the Zionists were pressuring them for. So I think once you even get to the Peel Commission, it's immoral. A lot of Zionists will say, well, look at the Peel Commission. The Jews were willing to accept this tiny piece of land, between Tel Aviv and Haifa along the coast, and just to be a Jewish state. And the Arabs never accepted that. And I'm like, but within there, they're calling for population transfer. Now, in our modern sense, transferring population is the crime of ethnic cleansing. It's a crime against humanity. So in the times, this was thought of as okay. So as you were saying, human beings were a lot more primitive, even 100 years ago, even 30 years ago, 40 years ago. You're just starting to get, with the fall of apartheid, with the falling of the Berlin Wall, within our own lifetimes, civilization and our modern sense of morality is really starting to pick up, and things that our grandparents' generation thought was acceptable, we no longer think is acceptable. And basically everything along the lines of population transfer, any way to do this in an immoral way, I think the Zionists needed to have to give up. And in order to pull that off, they would need to have communication with the Palestinians. And that's what I would say, that from what the Palestinians should have done is have better communication with the Zionists. Say, listen, I understand that you're suffering and that you want to come here and build a homeland, a place that you won't be persecuted. But we need to do this together in a way that creates a democracy, in a way that's reasonably fair, and it's not going to have tons of people moving in all at once and overwhelming us. It's not going to have pushing people out of their homes. And you have to do this in a responsible and ethical manner. And if this is what we want to do to avoid a conflict, we want to bring people here and build a society together, then we can do that as, mature, reasonable adults. And so both sides should have been mature. And I guess my side, obviously, was the one that was attempting to move back to a place that they hadn't been from for a very long time, and some of them started to want to take it over and become the majority, and not find a way to be equals here, but find a way to be the dominant power. The whole idea of the whole concept of a nation state, which at the time sort of made sense. You had these empires in Europe, these these conglomerates of multiple nations that were starting to fall apart. The British Empire, the French Empire, the Russian Empire, and they were starting to collapse. And people thought, okay, so where should you draw the borders of all these new countries? So the logical thing is make borders where different ethnic groups are. Make it what's called a nation state. You draw a line around this group of people. They seem to have a similar culture, and you call that a country. And so, that sort of, it makes sense if you're, if you have a giant empire and it's falling apart, how you make new countries out of it. But it's not, you see it in the Balkans, you see it in this part of the world. You can't always make perfect lines where you have only one ethnicity. That's an ideal, and an obsession with that, you end up in an unending conflict. You can see it also in our neighboring countries, in Lebanon, in Iraq, in Syria, where you want to have one ethnic group take over the entire country, or want to reshape the borders so only their ethnic group. You have an Alawite state, and then you have Lebanon, which has so many different ethnic groups in one tiny place. You can't chop Lebanon into tiny little countries. It's not functional. You need to have, the Middle East here is a very multi-ethnic part of the world. It's a part of the world with 10,000 years of history. You're going to have obviously a lot of different cultures and a lot of different people that feel attached to this land. So you need to have a way to have the modern multi-ethnic country where you have different cultural groups in a country that all feel part of a common identity. And so that needed to be the vision, but obviously it wasn't. That's where we that's where we bring us to where we are today. I think you could say what should have been. Obviously we don't have a time machine. I can't go back and talk sense into them from 100 years ago. So but I think we can learn lessons from the mistakes that were made in the past and figure out how to move forward.
Yeah, I like what you said. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now this is sort of a related question. What do you think your side should apologize for? This is sort of what we could have done better, but where should you apologize? Not necessarily only in 1948 or 1920, but what even for up into the modern era, where this has continued to play out for over 100 years of suffering for a large number of people.
You mean apologize for the Israelis or the Jewish people, or apologize in general?
I mean, you could apologize on behalf of the Palestinians. What should the Palestinians apologize for in their part of the conflict? And then obviously I'll say what I think the Israelis should apologize for.
Yeah, but I'm saying you're asking apologize as in for another people, for the Israelis, or apologize for just
on behalf of the Palestinians. You're the Palestinians. I'm the Israelis.
I know. I'm saying apologize as Palestinians for Israelis, or apologize for things that were not done well, for example. What do you mean by apologize for people group, or apologize about things that
for the Palestinians, for terrorism, for various things that have been done over the period, for not understanding the other side, whatever it is.
What should we apologize? Okay. I'm thinking as I'm. We should apologize for patriarchy, which have led us in a very, I believe, demeaning way that has not allowed our women to co-resist enough, at least in the first phases of the conflict. As I said, I mentioned the stupidity part of reading political, let's say, agenda, although it's not easy. But yeah, apologizing for stupidity. Apologizing for trusting that the Arab governments were kind of our side. apologize. But yeah, kind of regretting that. Yeah, which is stupidity in a sense. Um, I think apologizing for all forms of violence, although some believe it's the ultimate necessity, at some point it's the only last resort. But yeah, apologize for the attitude that violence is the solution. Um, Definitely, anybody that, although it's different opinions, but apologize for any person who has killed at least the innocent one from the other side. Children, whether it's women or even men, who were not like directly partaking in hostilities, as it says in international legal terms. But some Palestinians view every Zionist as a kind of committing crime because they are stealing land by the mere existence. So it's yeah, apologizing for not focusing on our own inner development and our own unity as Palestinians. Although any people group can have that, but they don't have much privilege. So apologizing for accepting Oslo for sure. It's a very, very wrong agreement, unfortunately. Uh, Arafat could have done the negotiation, but at the end, I would have said, if he had said no, would have been amazing. But yeah, apologizing for Oslo, which just affirmed and continued the existence of the occupational regime of Israel. Um, Apologizing for continuously acting as victims, although we are, but as in emotionally, for having such a deep identity crisis. Although it's not exactly something to apologize for, it's more of a consequence sometimes, but we have the responsibility for sure. Um, Apologizing for Islamizing the Palestinian conflict and thinking it's Muslims versus Jews, excluding the others also, and kind of religionizing, if that's a new term, the conflict. Um, and believing that I respect when Muslims believe if they are martyrs, they go to heaven. But the concept that this is everybody and everybody should believe like this attitude should apologize for. There's people who don't believe like this and we should respect part of the Palestinian people. Um, it's a long list. Anyway, you go ahead. And
Sure.
I'm thinking a lot.
Appreciate what you said. I think my side should apologize for not humanizing the Palestinians earlier, and maybe not doing it enough now. But not realizing that even though we were suffering and we were looking for a place to seek refuge, to preserve our culture, to go back to our homeland, to recognize that there were other people here, and that they that they recognize that there were other people here, and they also have rights and dignity, and to care, and not to think that you can just relocate people as if that's somehow moral and that's okay, and or to keep people as second class citizens in any kind of situation, you know, um, for the idea that they would settle the area of the West Bank and Gaza right after we took it over, and not like assume you were going to give everyone equal rights. If you're going to settle it, you should give people citizenship, not just try to play games and take over territory and not, and see what you can get away with, but actually, care about the people and their lives. And for all sorts of discriminatory policies that are going on today against, Palestinians in East Jerusalem, not letting them get married to someone from the West Bank, give people hard times, reunifying families, home demolitions, making it difficult for people to build houses, or finding excuses to take away their residency, take away their homes, to not care about them, to just just look at numbers, to not look at people, and just to care about only yourself, and in a lot of ways, and to not educate the next generation on how it's important to care about the other person, and to humanize and realize, and then to make excuses for how the other side just hates you when you don't respect them as equal human beings, and then to live in this, this fantasy that everyone wants to persecute you all the time, which is, has happened. We have been persecuted a lot, one of the most persecuted people in history. But to not learn from that, and not to realize that, we can't do it to someone else. We were persecuted for 2,000 years in Europe, massacred over and over again. You can't, you have to end the cycle of discriminating against human beings, and that's what makes a country worth living. And if you want to make a homeland for yourself in Palestine, it has to be built on a foundation of freedom and democracy and equality, and not having that as your basic value, not just ethnic domination as the primary thing, respecting your culture without trying to eliminate another people's culture. It's not a way. So yeah, all of that, and definitely all the use of unnecessary use of violence, unnecessary use of everything, checkpoints, discrimination, what have you. So ideally, we should stop that, and break the cycle, and respect each other as human beings.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I just maybe remembered something that I said, but I'll say again differently. Apologizing that I think the occupation is our only main problem. I'm not taking the dream, the hope to develop ourselves and focus on what we can control first versus what we cannot. So yeah, this is maybe one main apology.
Yeah, and realizing your potential as individuals, as people, right?
Yeah,
Right. Say the same thing on our side, that you don't realize that that there's a future without this conflict, that we can, and that should be what we all hope for, instead of saying that that's what we all hope for, but actually, you know, envision it and believe in it, and do the actions that'll take us there, a future without a conflict, without suffering.
yeah.
You know. So those are the questions. We could digress a little bit on the issue of settlements that we had obviously a differing opinion on. Not that I'm not necessarily pro settlements, in the sense that I think we should actively build settlements and discriminate against Palestinians and take over land, while maximum land and limited minimum Arabs. I don't believe in that, obviously, but even the current situation, we have a difference of opinion. So do you want to mention something about that, or should I could start?
Maybe I want to ask you more to clarify, because I think the point we had different opinions or disagreements upon is you're comparing something with uprooting settlement if in case it happens, Not that I'm for it, but I'm saying if in case it happens, if it's the last resort to make a two-state solution, for example, you compare it with neck day, you compare it with. So I'm trying to understand your philosophy here and also your
Sure.
philosophy of equality. Keep speaking about equal humans. Maybe I'm misunderstanding you. You're putting oppressor and oppressed on the same equilibrium, and so explain to me more the settlements, your comparison, and then I will answer more with the analogies that I already spoke with you a bit about. But I'll
Sure.
ask you. I don't misunderstand you.
Sure. I mean, I'll bring. I remember a friend of mine who advocates. He lives in the settlements. He's one of these like settlement advocates, and he asked me like, what issue do you think if you were an advocate for settlements, what would I say? Would you talk about the Jewish connection to the land for thousands of years? All these archaeological sites. Would you talk about how the settlements are necessary for defending Israel and get Republican Americans to support? Oh, Israel needs to defend itself. And I said, no, this is not what defends. To me, this is not the story that makes you want to like protect these people. Tell the human story. Tell me about the kids who go to school there, or the kid who rides his bicycle down the street, plays in the park for the first time, and this is his memories. This is his life. He lives in this town. He was born there. This is his world. This is what he knows. Tell the human face of these people that moved there, not the geopolitical stuff. Like, who cares? Or ancient history. How much is that reflecting in your every day to day? I mean, I like that there's all these archaeological sites. How often do I go to visit them? In the country here in real life. I take my kids to the kindergarten. I go take my kids to the park. I go to work. That's real life. You know, so I could tell you my philosophy. I know that Adar's having Norman Finkelstein. I like some of the things he says. One of the things he often says is he starts to argue about that. I've heard him recently say that he doesn't know how he's feeling about the situation in light of the fact that B'Tselem says that there's an apartheid situation and that the international community, or at least amongst liberal college, left-leaning people, are moving in the direction of one democratic state as sort of an ideal. And he's like, I don't know exactly what to make of it, but I still see him falling back on what he's been doing for years, saying that this what we should do is the law. The law says that it's illegal for them to be there, and we should move them. And what they have the right to pick up their stuff and to leave the settlements. That's their right, but they don't have the right to be there. That will make equality here, implementing the law. So now I would argue, as my sort of contradiction, let's take an alternative perspective on what's the situation in the West Bank. Let's say that there was a place called the Mandate of Palestine, just like there was a mandate for Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Kuwait. All the countries in the region were part of the Ottoman Empire, and the international community at the end of the war, they realized they're not going to give it back to the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire to run all these territories. They're going to make independent states out of them. One of those was called the State of Palestine, or it was the Mandate of Palestine. It was a mandate, means they've had an agreement with the international community to make Palestine into a country, and these are the borders of it. They then had a proposal to divide this country into two states. The majority of the population were the Palestinians, and they said, no, we don't want to divide it. So that was shut down. That was not accepted. That was a recommendation by the General Assembly. That was not necessarily the law. The law is then Palestine is still one state. It's Palestine. End of story. There was a war, and there was an armistice line, an agreement between Jordan and Egypt in the territories in question for the West Bank and Gaza. They had taken over some territory that went to their country, that they had ceded it, and Israel existed as the remainder of Palestine. There was an additional war after that in 1967. Israel took over the territory that was in Jordan and in Egypt. And since then, Israel has signed an agreement with Egypt that they are at peace. And Egypt does not say it wants the Gaza Strip back, and Jordan does not want the West Bank back. So if you would going from that logic, they don't have a claim to the territory. So it goes back to its original structure. It's the mandate. It's only one country. Now, what happened here in Israel, after at about 1994, there was a big shift. South Africa fell, right? The apartheid system in South Africa fell. Two other things happened the same year in 1994. Israel ratified the International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights. This is like an agreement by all democratic countries that everyone who lives in your country has citizenship, has a right to vote, has basic legal standing under the law, has the right to fair trial. These are sort of a set of principles that democratic countries hold. So Israel didn't want to end up like South Africa. They wanted to stay part of the family of democratic nations. They signed this agreement and they went to the Oslo Accords. They created this idea that the West Bank and Gaza aren't really part of Israel. That's why you shouldn't force us like South Africa to make one country. Don't do to us what they did. It's really another country. You see, it's at 2-1-2, and they created this sort of legal framework of a two-state solution to avoid having one democratic state where they would lose what their vision of a Jewish state was. From that perspective, if you hold that it's really one country, you can't say we're going to move all the Jews out behind one line. If it was one country and you said, I want to move 850,000 people of a particular ethnic group behind this line so I can make an ethnically pure state over here, that's a crime. That's called ethnic cleansing. So if you hold that it's one country, it's not the law. It's a crime against humanity. So now when you're saying, well, I'm believing in this idea, the legal fiction you could call it, or this presumed idea that this is the law of the two-state solution, and then I want to do something where now, because it's two states, it's totally fine. The problem is that doesn't resonate, because when you look at it from the perspective of if it's one country, you're removing a whole bunch of people from their homes to create an ethnically pure state. That would be a crime if it was in another context, and the context is not so clear. By the time they decided that they wanted to create two states, 17 years had gone by and they had moved several 100,000 people. And they signed the Oslo Accords and even agreed that like a large percentage of this territory would stay under Israel control and continue building settlements. And now they got to the point, and it's not random. They could have just, for security, put military bases there, right? And put soldiers. If you were to wrap up a military base and put it back in Israel, no one would say anything. That's not a human face. So what they did here is they created human shields. The Israeli government put civilians there to make it immoral to move them out. So I think because we're in that situation where it's not really moral to uproot people from the homes that these are their homes. This is where they were born, they were raised, this is where they live. To move everyone out of their houses to create an ethnically pure state becomes immoral. You can't motivate yourself to want to do it. So that's why I'm leaning in favor of making one democratic state or one democratic country here, because it's not really moral to say I want to evacuate a large population. A large number of these people went there because of economic incentives. In the late 70s and 80s, Israel was in a total economic collapse. There was, the currency collapsed, the stock market crashed. People couldn't afford to buy bread, and there had been a social, system, a socialist sort of leftist system created at the beginning of the state of Israel. That system started to implode. They didn't have enough, stability in it, and they wanted to move to a free market, capitalist type society. They completely crashed the welfare state system that they had built. And there was, poverty everywhere. The only place where they were helping people live was in the West Bank. They were helping build these settlements because they felt like it was in their security interests or whatever, and they would give financial incentives for people to move there. They'd give them health care. They'd give them cheaper schools. All the conditions were better, and these people had no choice. They could live in poverty in cities in Israel, or they could move, and all of a sudden they're in wealthy European-style suburbs. So they came there because they had no choice. Now these people are being used by the government like pawns. And now it's very easy for the people on the left to say, oh, it's not us. We didn't do anything. It's these evil settlers. But the territory was taken over when it was a left-wing government was in power when they conquered it. And they had all specific areas that they wanted to take over for strategic reasons. And they used Israelis as human shields, as pawns in negotiations and as instruments of geopolitical, playing around. Both parties did. the right wing also, once the economy started to collapse, they tried to move to a liberal, neoliberal, capitalist economy. They wanted to keep voters voting right wing, so they would convince people to move to the settlements, give them sort of special benefits if they would move there. And then they were a captive audience. Now all these people who move to the settlements are going to vote right. They'll vote Likud because they put them there. They're going to support keeping them in their house. So they took these people and made them instruments of the government system. So that's why I say, you shouldn't punish these civilians who moved there largely for economic reasons, because they were being used as pawns in geopolitical schemes of the government. Make the government suffer. If you're going to make them move, then have the government pay them to leave. You shouldn't. They're not the evil ones. The governments who agree to subsidize their moving there, to protect them with military. It's not like they just picked up and moved there on their own. Like here and there a little bit, but the vast majority of them moved to settlements that were established and built with roads, infrastructure, plumbing, electricity, everything. They didn't build that themselves. That was provided for them for a purpose. So that's why I don't blame the settlers as much as I blame the government, and therefore I don't want to punish them as individuals. I think the government should suffer in terms of, we should now have to have democracy for everyone and have a system where we're having half the government is Palestinian now, because you've taken over this entire territory. You settled all the population. It's too late. You can't undo it. It's not moral, the government, to save itself and preserve an 80% Jewish government at the expense of moving out all these people that they supported bringing there. It's too late. It's done. That's my opinion. So I'm not in favor of Israel continually building, the government continually doing more wrong, but I don't want to do a wrong by evicting all these people from their houses as a way to let the government escape what they did wrong, and to make the innocent people the scapegoats. That's my position.
And the same question I would ask you, Rafi, without even going to the detail. If, and it's an assumption, not necessarily true, if evacuating the people, despite the fact that I'm not necessarily very in favor, oh, please, let's evacuate them, would end the conflict and bring peace, do you think we should not evacuate them and continue the conflict? What do you think?
That's a tough one.
If,
I'm not sure that evacuating them will end the conflict. If
please
you could
just
come to an
understand.
agreement,
Take it as a, if it is.
If it could be done and everyone would be compensated, which is very challenging to do, it would be very, I would say it would be, you'd have to recognize that what you're doing in evacuating is immoral. So when you say it, it less bothers me than when I have, people on the left in Israel saying it, and they're like, I don't care what happens to them. They broke the law. I'm like, no, your government put them there. And if you're going to take them out, you need to pay everyone and put them in new houses and make them recover. So if you can find a way to minimize the suffering of all the people that you're going to now cause suffering, and do it without violence. And I'm skeptical that you can move this quantity of people without violence. It's not 850,000. There's more people to move than there are soldiers in the Israeli army. Who's going to move them? And then these people, the people who are in the settlements, they're also the soldiers. You're going to tell people to evict their own mothers and fathers from their houses? I mean, it's very challenging. In theory, with a heavy heart, if you could do it with minimal damage and it would actually bring peace, yes, I would agree to do it. I don't know if it could happen with minimal damage, and I'm definitely sensitive to the reality of 850,000 human beings who live in houses who are going to be ripped from their homes in a potentially violent situation and without places to bring them. We don't have homes for empty houses, empty beds for 850,000 people on this side of the line. Where are you going to put them? It's with all the catastrophes that would be. That's why I say it's similar to the Nakba in terms of the human aspect. You're taking a similar number of people. There was 750,000 people in the Nakba, taking them out of their houses and putting them in a refugee camp somewhere. I mean, that's what there would be in practice if you did everyone. If, let's say, you only did 150,000 of them, still a huge number. It's less bad. It's still, but you have to recognize that that's suffering to human beings. That's not to be taken lightly.
Amazing, Rafi. I think by giving questions, it evens where I am having, where I know I have the different opinions together or disagreeing with you, or maybe I'm getting to understand you more, so maybe it's less disagreement. Let's
Sure.
assume it's the only situation to end the conflict to evacuate them again with a potentially violent. What would you put first, Rafi? Would you put first that, oh no, because there would be violence, maybe even some people may not be fully compensated? Would you put this as a priority versus where the Palestinians suffering? What would you put as a priority? I love that
I
people would hear you as a Jewish speaker speaking about
Sure.
that.
I mean, I would say that's why I would say one man, one vote. I mean, and that's where I feel like we're in. This is the reality. You would have, in order to remove them, you would have some violence. You would have a large number of people without homes, and I'm not sure you could really end the conflict with it, including Jerusalem. I'm skeptical, like with all the details, that it would happen. If it could
Just
happen with
just assume we'll come, but just assume if it will end the conflict.
assuming it will
What
end
would
the
you
conflict, and I would have to see that. I would have to go into the details of the cost. How much violence? How many people are we talking about removed? What's the plan for compensating them? What I'd want to see the details. What's the plan for Jerusalem, where we live? Is there a wall between you and me? I mean, where are we going to put that? If you want to work at my company, do you need a visa now to come across the street and work in West Jerusalem? How what you know?
listen? You I know you're trying to go into more details for accuracy's sake.
Yeah.
Forget about the details. Assuming
Okay.
the conflict would end, true peace would come, regardless
True
of
peace.
the privileges afterwards. This can be solved in a few decades. Border, no border. But we're speaking about people stopping to be killed or to suffer. If the only situation is to evacuate and would lead for, let's assume, for it would lead to ending the conflict, how would you, for sure, would you put this as, oh no, if some are gonna face violence and not get compensation, I'm not. I would rather no keep the conflict as it is until some other, let's say, preparation, some other solution, resolution, whatever it is, come into place. So what would you do?
I don't know. I like I said, I would have to see the details of what we're talking about in terms of the human suffering to my side, and weigh. Now we're talking about comparing human suffering. Do I kill this person or I kill this person? Where what? So then you need to go into how many people are we talking about suffering on each side, and what's my alternative? So me as a person, I would say find an alternative that's really that leads to no suffering for anybody. That's what I'm in favor of. But if there's a version that has a minimal human suffering to both sides that leads to real peace, I would definitely do that and look for finding the details of the least number of people we'd have to evacuate, the way to compensate them fairly, the way to manage Jerusalem where we live in a humane and civilized manner. I would need to know that we would. It's the place where I live. That this would not you know not cause unnecessary suffering to either people. I know Palestinians are suffering, and I know Israelis are suffering from violence against them here and there. And there's it's a conflict. It's something that needs to end. So that's
But
that's how I feel.
are you putting the two people in equilibrium?
I put each individual human being as equal to all human beings, like any person. So
Equal
I'd
in what?
want right. All people are equal.
In what?
Ma, shoo.
Equal in what?
In their right to dignity, freedom, life, protection from suffering and violence, for
Okay,
the right to
nice.
health,
Yeah.
all human rights. Every person deserves human rights uh, as much
What about
as
what about responsibility? You think everybody is equal in responsibility? Let me give you an example.
okay.
Is a baby responsible to provide for his family?
No,
No, right? And he wouldn't be ever blamed for it. But the father is responsible, or the mother. Yes? For different responsibilities. Let me make it now a bit more provocative. Is the rapist more a different responsibility than the rape?
obviously.
Obviously. So, if you're putting here's the discussion that I think we have the differences about. And this is, by the way, why I proudly do such debate. Because nobody can claim from my own people, although even if they want to, that I'm a normalizer. Why? Because I'm totally against this equilibrium section that, with all due respect, some Jewish peace activists are promoting, which I'm gonna explain now, please. I wanna hear you.
Sure.
Basically, somebody, I don't wanna use the word rape because it can be very negative. Theft, easiest. Somebody stole my car. Few years pass. He has a child. His child were always rides the car. And maybe I told you this. I don't know before Facebook messages. I don't know. Then the child is connected to the car. Suddenly, the guy worked out his best throughout the court. Finally, he got a law that says to the thief, "You have to give back the car."
Yes.
Will that decision be called ethnic cleansing? Would it be called unfair? Would ever the criminal, by the court saying he's a criminal, putting him in prison, be ever said, "Oh no, you can't treat a criminal like this. He's equal to the one he killed"?
Okay.
Do we ever do that?
I
Tell
can
me.
answer you.
Yeah.
I'll tell
Okay.
you the
Okay.
story. So I think what you're doing is collectivizing one group of people and another group of people. If let's say there are 100 people
Listen. Before
or
we go into
200
the
people,
details, I
the
want to interrupt you.
Smith
Wait,
family and the
Rafi.
Jones family on two
You will
sides of the
always speak
street.
about collectives. Wait. We are first need to simplify it, then go into, of course, the collective is more multi-layered and multi-dimensional. I know. I gave you an example of a child,
I
innocent,
agree with that. And then a
born,
rape.
connected with a car. Please, 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 please. It's his father's car, it's his family, it's his car. Also, is it unfair that the court suddenly decides, well, this is not your car, sorry, you took it from this other fellow. You have to return it back. And I'm not saying even he has to return it back. Maybe they find a, you have to pay him at least to buy a new one. Is
Okay.
with that okay? Now,
Fine.
regardless of the way, is it the same responsibility of the one who's stolen from versus the one who actually stole? Is it equal responsibility?
Correct. No, but it's not one.
No.
We're not
That
talking about one
that
people here. We're not
okay. So
talking about
before
two individuals.
yes, yes.
Palestine is
What?
not one
I'm
person,
going.
and Israel is
I'm
not one
going. I'm
person.
going. Rafi, allow me. I listen to you, so allow me, please. Let's respect.
Okay.
Now, before we get into the collective and the complicated, the word that many Israelis love to use, with all due respect, sometimes it's accurate, sometimes it's pretty, unfortunately, twisting reality. Before we get into the complicated part, this is a simple reality. When we speak about equality, equality of dignity, equality of, as you said, human rights, not responsibility. This is what anti-normalization move. That's what I like about BDS. It very clearly says, although I'm not the most BDS fan, and I explain myself, what I like about BDS, we are the oppressed, although sometimes we're oppressors as well as Palestinians. But we are the oppressed group, mainly, not only, mainly. Israel is the oppressor group, mainly, though not only. Okay? Those bring very different terms of responsibility and thus policies and thus law and thus, hopefully, reaction, healthy reaction, or has been for the last 72 years, unhealthy, disobedient, disrespectful, rude, evil, terroristic, inhumane, selfish, exclusionist, Zionistic reaction. That's what it's been bringing, and I'm using Zionistic here in a negative form with all due respect to the word Zionist, those who love it. I'm using it negatively here in a negative light. So, all of this is, I hope that the reaction would change. So, the responsibility, we cannot put the oppressor, now we're going to get to the collective. Oppressor, whether it's the government partially or mainly or partially the people as well, but not all the people. That should not understand. We cannot put them with the equal responsibility of the person whose land is taken from them before their very eye. Their vineyards is destroyed in front of them, before them, before their very eyes. Their houses are demolished. They're kicked out. Their family history is deleted. Their history as people, their name is deleted from it. Their identity is being deleted daily. Until today, I can't say I'm a Palestinian freely among the Israelis. Every day I face this, saying a Palestinian. And you just even mentioned a bit about it when we were speaking of the question. And so, Rafi, this is my problem. This is immorality. Immorality is an equalizing responsibilities of the stronger versus the weaker, of a baby versus a big bully, of a thief versus the one who's stolen from, with the rapist versus the raped. And I'm not saying those are absolute terms. The rapist can be partially raped as well. The raped can be partially rapist as well. So hear me out. So what we're saying is responsibility is different. And so this is the term. So if, based on this, if you agree with me, you agreed partially about the responsibility, they're not equal. If the only situation, I'm not saying it is, if the only solution is to evacuate those people whom I don't hate, I don't wish harm for, although they have been doing harm, done harm, will do harm to my people daily, but I don't wish harm for, who have themselves at least believe that they have faced harm throughout history as Jewish persecuted people, yet they still use the same harmful methods that they opposed throughout history that you mentioned yourself. I don't wish them harm, but if the only situation is for a court, assuming an imaginary situation, court to decide, hey, you need to leave, whether you like it or not, because this car is not yours. We apologize. Of course, there's people with you partially innocent. They didn't come, the government brought them. Everybody needs to pay, but you are partaking in the crime of collective exclusion and ethnic cleansing of the weaker victim and oppressed group called Palestinians, not vice versa. And that's using terms and twisting terms compared to a Nakba as if you're making those main oppressors are now are gonna face a crime of humanity, which is completely twisted because it's different responsibility. It's like saying when a court says that a thief should go to prison, this is a crime against humanity. Totally wrong. Although I don't believe in the court systems. By the way, I don't believe in prison systems. But they're doing it out of justice to protect society from continuing. There's another big discussion about prison systems. But them doing it is not a crime against humanity in the sense of comparing it to the victim and comparing it to the actual person who somebody killed and went to prison for. Or comparing it to somebody who took a house in 1948 from somebody who's not there. Even whatever now complications you may bring to the table, Rafi, I know you will tell me, well, they took empty land. Israel way more, they took way more from historic Palestine than this West Bank, way less percentage. You even named the percentages last time for me amazingly and accurately. And they didn't even take physical houses at times. They took actual lands, they built their own houses, their own vineyards. They only destroyed stuff, but they didn't take whatever you bring into the table, it is still a justification. Not that you're trying to justify, you're against this act, but it's still a justification or a minimizing, of the crime, and suddenly focusing on the humanity of settlers, which is beautiful actually in you. However, it's twisting responsibility. It is not moral, and it's twisting the responsibility that they have. as if I steal something now, if I'm gonna repent, we say in English, or if I'm gonna change my mind, go back and ask for forgiveness, apologize like the Germans apologized for the Holocaust. I'm gonna compensate the one I stole from, restore everything I can restore to him. Not say, oh well, it's too late. I'm sorry. I can't now remove my child. He's innocent. Oh no, it's many families here. I'm sorry. Well, at least stop building. At least stop taking more. And I'm saying you are for this. You're not promoting building more stuff. But I'm saying you are as if against, you're not willing to stop the suffering at any cost because you are more focused. You're still more focused coming across. That's what I'm trying to understand you, not to be unfair to you. You're still more focused on the Jewish people suffering, which is very Jewish centered, selfish, and oppressor centered. You're not centered around the victim. And any man of justice is victim centered regardless of ethnicity. If I'm a man of justice, I should be victim centered, whether it's in Afghanistan, whether it's wherever. I should be victim centered, weak centered. That's why we defend women and children the most, because they're the most vulnerable, not because we like men are stupid, they're less worthy, oh, they're less valuable. No, we're all equal. Men, women, children are equal, by the way, in dignity. Yet we focus on the weak. This is justice, ethicality, morality that takes into consideration all those different components of responsibility, weakness, power, etc. With that being said, you can bring whatever you want now to the table of those complications. And I'm willing to change my mind if I'm mistaken. I'm saying it genuinely. Yes,
Okay.
this is what I keep hearing. I want to hear you. This is what I keep hearing, though. You're still focused on even the oppressors, or the oppressors facing injustice or facing suffering. And I'm not, of course, for the oppressor facing injustice. If I'm asking for the stopping of injustice, I don't want the oppressor to face it. Although he's causing it to me, he deserves it by human logic. Like if you kill, you should be killed. If it's an eye for eye, like Judaism and Islam, for example, Caesar, and so on and so forth. However, I'm not saying Judaism and Islam as a disrespect. I'm saying that's how people believe Judaism and Islam presents it. Some don't see it also this way. Like Christianity is different. It says love your enemies. It's just different principles. I'm not saying anything is better, anything is bad. But I'm just saying those are the concepts. So, sorry, I'm repeating. I see you're focused on the oppressor suffering as if it's more and equally important to the victim suffering, which is twisting the responsibility now that we address, the responsibility spectrum and concept that we just addressed, which is not equal. It's not an equilibrium. So please.
Okay.
I know I was long, but to be fair.
A lot of things to unpack there. So what I would say is that it's not one victim and one victimizer. There's 6 million Jews and 6 million Palestinians in the land, and then there's more people outside the land, obviously. It's, if you had 100 people with 100 cars and 25 of them stole, and their last name is Smith, and another group of people are the Joneses, and they each had 100 cars, and 25 people from the Smiths stole 25 cars from the Joneses, then you'll say, well, I want to steal 40 cars from the Smiths as compensation. You could take the cars back that they stole. Like, that's why I was talking about within the West Bank, about 1 in 5 people, Israelis who are living in the West Bank, are living on private Palestinian land. The rest of them are living on public land. Now, depending on your perspective, if 22% of the country belongs only to the Palestinian ethnicity, and the other part belongs to the Jewish ethnicity, although I don't necessarily believe, either side belongs to a particular ethnicity. They should belong to the people who live there. So from that perspective, a small percentage of the Jews who live in the West Bank are sitting on private Palestinian land. They need to either give the land back or compensate or do something. And they should be compensated because they were enabled to live there by the government. You have a similar number within Israel proper are living on private Palestinian land. something like 1 in 5 Israelis in Israel proper are living on private Palestinian land. They should either give that to Palestinians, or that land should be compensated for and give it back to Palestinians. The Palestinians who lost private property should get compensated either financially or got land back if nobody's there, obviously. But I don't want to collectively punish every Jew who's living beyond a specific line, that we've decided that we are making 2 states here based on the idea that there needs to be 2 states in order to preserve ethnic domination by either group. They want to make 2 states, so you have 1 state which is a Palestinian state and 1 state which is a Jewish state. That doesn't need to be. This is an idea. This is sort of the opposite of South Africa. In South Africa, they didn't say, I'm worried about them whiteifying East Johannesburg. They didn't say, get the white people farther away from the Bantustans. They said there are no Bantustans. They did the opposite of what they do here. They say we don't recognize that these Bantustans are actual countries. There's only one South Africa. So you could say that there's only one Palestine, and everyone should be an equal citizen in it. And from that perspective, there's no settlers, or there's a lot less settlers. You could say 25% or 20% of the settlers are living on private land, and the rest of them are living on what was public land in the country. So then, instead of picking a group to pick of people who are happen to be living over a random line, pick on the group of people who are living in private land and say either you give back this land or we're compensated. I think it's picking random victims. That's my problem. You're saying this random group of Jews I'm going to victimize more. They're more the oppressors than Jews living in Tel Aviv who are living or in Jaffa in somebody's house that was Palestinian. He's not the oppressor. This guy who's living on a hill that nobody owned in Palestine, but I want to make him the oppressor because I need to make a state where everyone is Palestinian to make it fair. Because there's a state where there are Jews are everywhere, where they're a majority. It doesn't need to be. That's why I'm not in favor of this mindset of the 2-state framework, because it picks a random group of Jews to pick on as the problem, a certain group of Palestinians who are the obstacle to peace, those Palestinians who have a dream of moving back to Israel, they're the obstacle, and those Jews that are living in the West Bank, people that are attached to the wrong side of the line. We've picked which ethnicity gets which side of the line, and if you want to be on the other side of the line and you're the wrong ethnic group, you're the problem. You're the obstacle to peace. The stubborn Palestinian who wants to move to Jaffa, or the stubborn Jew who wants to live in Hebron. And I'm like, this whole concept is racist. You don't have to have a random line where I pick which ethnic group lives on which side. And that's the framework, I think, that's stopping us from progressing. Because as long as you say, I'll just convince this group of Jews to move over this line, and then I'll end up in peace, and we're not going to get there. And instead of saying the whole concept is crazy. Listen, you all want to live in one country. Most of the Jews think
Rafi, I want to ask you a question. Not to interrupt. Yeah. I want to ask you a question. What is more important? Yes. Human life, or whether this country has 2 states or 5 states or 1 state? What is more important to you?
Obviously, human life.
Okay. Let's assume another question. I want you to continue, but just for me to... Let's assume with the current human beings, mentality of the human beings we have, unfortunately, the fastest way to stop bloodshed and to stop ruining human life is a 2-state solution. Would you go for that?
I don't believe that's true. Assuming that was true, I would agree. I don't believe
you would agree.
True.
Okay, sure. Continue. Sure. I'm assuming if it's true, would you go for it?
Yeah, if you could do it, as I said, in a way that minimized the suffering to both people, was fairly compensating people on both sides, had a realistic solution that was humane for the people in Jerusalem, then I would say fine. And you could actually do it safely and in a reasonable amount of time, absolutely. I would vote yes if that was a referendum and everyone was a reasonable version of the 2-state solution along the lines of the Geneva Initiative, something like this, and everyone would agree to it. Yes, I would vote yes in the referendum. Do I think that that's going to happen? No. So that's why I think we've been going, it's 25 years, more time between now and 1994 than between 1994 and 1967. More time has passed since we started talking about Oslo. than between Oslo and the Naksa in the first place. I think it's beating a dead horse. It's sticking to something because you believe it's the quickest solution. If it was so quick, it would have happened. I think what they did in South Africa is a much quicker solution. Instead of arguing about where to draw the border, how to do security arrangements, blah, 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 one man, one vote, game over. It's much better. And then you don't have to argue about people in Hebron. Yishai can stay in Hebron, have a good time, eat kanafe there,
Rafi,
whatever.
Rafi,
Not my problem. You want to move to Jaffa?
You're comparing with South Africa. South Africa was eventually able to fall down. The system was because the international community finally took a stand. Whereas here you're saying we've been, whatever the beautiful word you used about the horse, the dead horse. We're doing this because, unfortunately, the stronger party, which is the oppressor party mainly, or they're not only, but the powerful party, doesn't want. They want to continue to have more land and more territory and continue to kick us out. You see, this is the problem we have, and the international community.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Well, you can always, in our opinion, I'll say a sentence and I want to let you complete because I spoke a bit more. In one sentence, for us, at least Palestinians, and many people in the world, this is the problem. If you deny it, as in denying, in our opinion, denying, then you will always live in your own concepts and philosophies aside from reality. If this is reality, if what I'm saying is true, then you will always be denying it if you don't. Well, the problem is simply Israel doesn't want, and they can. Simply, that's why the conflict is continuing. We offered the thing from 1967, 76, the two-state solution. The Arab states offered it. Israel could have planted it a long time ago and finished, but Israel doesn't want. They don't want peace. They want a piece of land, and more piece of land, and more peace. The joke goes, unfortunately, it's very true. Unfortunately, prove me wrong, and I'll give you all of my money, which are a few hundred shekels. But prove me wrong.
That's why I'm here to teach you from my perspective. I mean, you can teach me what the Palestinians know. I'll show you what it looks like from my side. Yeah, my side, again, I think Israel, we're not one person. It's not like Israel, you're personifying Israel as one guy. Like I'm one person. Israel is millions of people.
It's a figure of speech. Rafi,
every three of them completely disagree with each other.
Yes, but it's a figure of speech.
Sure. So that's what I'm saying. Israel's not sure what it really wants. I even see the government now is talking about minimizing the conflict, trying to find a way to have the conflict suffer the least amount of suffering without actually resolving the conflict. Because Israelis are conflicted about what to do about our conflict. We don't want to have a conflict.
We want to keep it.
But we don't want to evict all these people. We want the various things. And eventually, the Americans, it's not going to be forever. Israel's biggest supporter is the United States. And eventually, the United States is going to lean more towards pressuring Israel into doing something. The problem is, what is that something? By the time it gets there, Israel's going to be like, how many people will be living in the West Bank by the time America finally, there'll be 1 million and 1.5 million. It'll be ridiculous to pull that many people out. It'll be far gone. By the time it comes to actually do it, the two-state will be long dead and buried. So that's why I'm saying, forget about it. Just get actual Israelis comfortable with the idea we'll all live together in one state. And then when the pressure comes from the U.S., we'll say we have an alternative, a better version. Don't worry about it. We'll just live with equality. And everyone wants to do this anyways. And that will be so much easier to do. You don't have to compensate people. You don't have to figure out putting international forces to preserve, crossings in the middle, all sorts of shenanigans. How are you going to have defense security and satellites to prevent missiles? None of this nonsense. You just have one government here. You go to the walls with big hammers and you knock them down and say, God, thank God we got over this stupidity. And we don't have to live like this anymore. And everyone will be so much happier. That's what I think, because it's not going to happen. It's not going to. By the time the pressure comes, it'll be so too late. It'll never happen.
But we agree in the philosophy. Of course, it's more ideal. It's more ideal to have a one-state solution. What we disagree upon, I'll tell you now in the list, and I still want to hear you. What we disagree upon. We disagree on the response to emergency and urgent human life. I think we have a different approach, and I don't believe you are responding to urgency or emergency. Unfortunately, sadly to say, we don't, because you are not centered around the Palestinian suffering. You're centered around your own people, which is in this particular case, unfortunately, is immoral. Although anybody can be centered around their own people, wait, and not be immoral. But in this case, it's immoral because your government, not your whole people, not everybody, of course. Please let go of those terms. Everybody, we don't have to keep mentioning not all. Of course, it's not all. It's never all, and not keep mentioning, oh, it's not everybody, and so it becomes shallow if one have to repeat all of this all the time. So your own government, at least partially, that's what you're centered around. The people group you come from. If I believe any moral person, if he's X, he's going to country Y, he needs to focus on people suffering called Z, not on people making those suffering called H. If he's Z centered, then he is a man or a woman of justice. He can bring relief. If he's H centered, then he would end up justifying stuff. I am thinking your approach is wonderful. However, some of the approach that you're bringing, for me at least, of course, I'm humbly presenting. I'm not evaluating you as a person. I'm just saying with the opinions here. I think it's blocking the urgency. Somebody dying, if your father now, your mother, or your sister is gonna be killed, and you're not responding so urgently to that, more than the idea of, oh, let everybody's equal and well, there is a moral issue with that for me. Although I know you're bringing wisdom, saying real complications. I'm not saying you're trying intentionally to twist anything here. The concept itself is twisted for me, not Rafi is twisted. Twisted as in fragile. It's not really coming. It's not human enough. And so this is the main issue. And second, you're still talking about settlers enjoying Palestine or historic Israel or historic Palestine or current Palestine. It doesn't matter, bro. Something more important again is human life. More than it's okay if settlers get banned, even the word banned, although I don't think in a two-state solution this will happen absolutely. But let's say it will happen absolutely. They will not get banned from ever visiting the West Bank, but let's say it will get banned for a few decades. So what? For the sake of human life and long-term peace, of course. And I know you disagree that this will lead to long-term peace, the two-state solution. Any people group, if I'm in a conflict with somebody who's stronger than me, I will try to compromise to agree with his terms over mine. And this is what we did since 1976. We said, take everything you keep everything you took. We'll call it Israel. We recognize it. Even the Arab nation, all the Arab agreements that we have, the summit in 2002, Saudi Arabia said very explicitly, hey, we will do normalizing and we'll do all economic relations. Everything will be fine. And we'll go back and forth on this. Just give Palestine the 22%. Just allow them to live in a sovereign state, have self-determination. Simple. If there is somebody who wants to control my life, and I know he can, I'll try to give them like more percentage of controlling certain aspects of my life, but just allow me to at least control some parts of my destiny, some parts maybe of maybe I want to become a musician. Would you please allow me? Is that okay, but I will not allow you to go to this store. Okay, sure. Like some aspects, and a bit by bit, if he gives me more space, then I can become naturally healthily stronger and living together. And then I can convince him, hey, now we're equal. We can maybe build something together as one people, as a group of friends, as a family, as a human family. I know maybe it sounds shallow to you, or maybe too, I don't know, but this is how it works. We don't push peace suddenly into ultimately people who have been fighting for so long, and let's have a one-state solution. Of course, this is the dream, but this is not the pragmatic dream. The pragmatic, Noam Chomsky, listen to him. He said, well, I don't see a two-state solution. I don't see a one-state solution. I see a one-state expanding. Israel keeps expanding. That's what I see. He said, look at the map. It keeps getting larger, larger. This is the Israeli plan. You're telling me, last response before you respond, because you're telling me, well, Israel doesn't know what it wants. Well, Israel is exactly giving me the same vibe, Rafi. Israel as a government, not everybody, not so please, yeah, giving me the exact same vibe or partial vibe of what you're giving me about this particular point of not emergent and urgent response to suffering. It's okay that there's people dying, as long as we enjoy some West Bank, historic Israel, biblical land, belonging, attachment, history. We've been persecuted in history. We deserve it all the time. We deserve this. We deserve, and yeah, maybe let's minimize some stuff, but let's not get the root out. No, 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 no. Let's just minimize. This is what I hear some vibe of you. Not, of course, your philosophy is amazing, far from what Israel presents. They don't present equal rights. But that same hesitance. What is a hesitant person? You know, somebody once said, what is the opposite of love? And somebody answered, it's hatred. And others said, no, it's indifference. So if I'm indifferent about the Palestinians, assuming that the Israeli government even cares about Palestinians, even 2% or 5% of love, then this is ultimately the opposite of love, indifference. Because I can still live with the conflict. Well, I'm strong enough to live with it. So what? I can go on and on and on and on, and just maybe minimize some stuff here and there. And I'm still dominant, like you mentioned in the beginning. I'm still excluding, but I'm still like the one. Still a Jewish country. I'm still. So I still keep expanding. And then suddenly, eventually, people will learn this is the de facto Israel. All of West Bank will be suddenly de facto Israel at some point. And it will be impossible to remove and bring back rights to Palestinians because settlers, oh my God, it will be a crime against humanity to remove them then. There'll be over 1 million or over 2 million. And this is the most inhumane sentence I can listen to. So immoral that the oppressor, in your opinion, does not deserve justice. And I'm not saying revenge. I'm saying boundaries. I'm saying they deserve to, even if it's collective. They're collaborators, brother, whether unconsciously, consciously, intentionally, or unintentionally. We can't say, oh, but every individual we have to. Well, it doesn't work like this because the other person who's suffering is having more serious suffering and, as we said, not equal responsibility. We have way more price to be given to us. Israel is way more responsible to pay us. We are way more. And we're having the response to receive, not to give, more, not only, but more. Because we are the oppressed mainly, but not only. Again, I'm using those terms, particularly with you, because you keep saying it's not one block. I know. We're not speaking about one blocks anymore. I wish that's not the discussion anymore. So, this is what I keep hearing, Raf. So please, I know I said a lot.
I don't know if I can answer, and we can't go on forever, but what I would say is that
we'll have to finish.
I do see that the situation is urgent. That's why I want to be involved and convince people to do something about it. What I don't think is a way to make it happen is to continue with the two-state solution. I don't think it's not something that's actually going to manifest. So I would think to continue to push in that direction, I'm just going to talk to myself. I'm not going to be able to convince people to let's just move 150,000 people over there and build new houses, and we'll put a wall in the middle of Jerusalem and set up metal detectors and everything, and build tunnels and all sorts of stuff, and then we'll make this this dream two-state solution. Let's just make that happen. Why don't we keep going? I don't see it happening. I think that it's easier at this point to convince them the other way. I do see that it's urgent. That's why I want to convince them. And I'll throw the question to you. Let's say I came with an alternative solution. You could have one democratic state where you have equal rights, but the price is you have to agree that the settlers can stay. So that's the price. The price is you don't get justice on them. They get to stay in their house. Yishai wins. Yishai gets to live in Hebron. He's fine. But every Palestinian, you can just go to the beach. People will get compensated. People can live in Tel Aviv, in Haifa, whatever they want. Would you take it?
But this is a very easy question, brother.
Yeah.
Well, but this is what we're promoting, me and you. Who
So
said we want the
so
settlers
what are
to
we
go
arguing
out?
about?
I'm telling you about the urgency. You see, Rafi,
I agree. That's the
I'm a
urgency.
bit disappointed. Allow me to share emotionally now. I'm a bit disappointed by you because
Okay.
you're not responding to the human suffering.
I
You're
am.
simply thinking of the very. But wait, where's your human? The if. Okay, assume with me that if I know it's a long discussion, we will not have it now. We have to
Yeah.
finish. If the two-state solution, I asked you already, stops the suffering immediately, at least temporarily for a decade or two, would you agree to do it? You told me in theory, yes.
Yes,
This
I
is
agree. I agree, but I don't think it's going to happen. That's why I tell people, let's do the one state. The two states
brother.
not going to
I
happen.
think you're reading that it will not happen is true because Israeli government doesn't want or is not very willing to do it. At least not if even if I
I'm
don't want.
telling you the reason,
Okay,
though. What about our government? Israel is a democracy. Our government, right, we have today is irrelevant. It's what is in our hearts and minds of the average of Israelis. And what we know, I'll tell you I live in West Jerusalem, but I have friends, I have relatives, I know people who live in the West Bank, and I don't want them to be kicked out of their houses. And a lot of Israelis either live there, one in 5 Israeli Jews live in the West Bank, something like that, or 14% of Israeli Jews, and they all have relatives who live there. So they are thinking about my cousin. I'm going to kick my cousin out of my house. My aunt who lives in that village over there.
and if your cousin attacked somebody and stole his car, would you tell him you have to give his car back?
But I don't see it that way. You're not going to
But
convince me that my
but
cousin
please
stole.
answer this question. If your cousin is a criminal,
If he's a criminal,
absolutely. Thank you.
right?
So many of those settlers are, brother. They're
Okay,
doing
but not the
something that
ones,
is not
not the ones
moral.
that everybody knows. Not the
You
ones that we
should be
know in
less.
real life.
Wait. We should be less centered on your own cousin because that's selfish first. It's not centered around conflict resolution. It's not centered again about the victim and the weaker. When I say victim, I mean weaker at least.
Mm.
It's still centered around your own life, your own relatives, your own connections, your own kin, your own. That's very
If I was
inhumane. That's
centered
very
around that,
selfish, Rafi.
I would do nothing. If I only cared about them, I could do nothing. But I care about Palestinians, so I want to say, let's give
But
everyone
where is
equal
your
rights.
priority?
My
Why is your
priority.
priority suddenly to your cousins who are powerful, more stronger? If my cousin is more powerful and he can kick a child, my priority as a man of justice is to protect the child, not my cousin. Even if my cousin does not intend to kick a child or beat a child, but simply if he can. Take your time, because I need to.
Okay, yes. So
I'm
that's
saying if my cousin can beat a child, even if he does not want to, my responsibility as a human rights activist or the man of justice is to protect the child, not my cousin, even if it's a random child. This is about the
right.
priority of conflict resolution, human rights, and justice.
Right.
But then what
I'm
is
looking at I'm telling you the mentality not of just me, but of everybody, of the Israeli side. I'll think about, let's say, my theoretical cousin. I'm a random Israeli. I have a cousin. I don't think he works as a computer programmer. He works in a store. He doesn't beat a child. He has children of his own. They go to school. He comes home. He puts food on
and
the
what
table,
is his
and he lives.
And
He
where
lives
is
in a
his
house. He
responsibility
lives
to
on a
leave?
hill. It wasn't private property. It was.
Brother, where is
Yeah.
his responsibility to leave the settlement if it brings more peace? Where is your responsibility to tell him, leave at least? I know you're a great person. Why do you sit in a place that causes conflict? Like Ishai is so proud to stay in a place that causes conflict. Like Yehuda Cohen, they're so proud to be in places that cause Palestinians hurt and wounds and death and blood and stolen and theft. Why? Where is the human responsibility here? If he brings awareness and awakeness to his ever conscience, he would bring back what he stole and he would leave the oppressed. Where is your conscience here as a human to tell the thief, stop being in the place that you're causing suffering? Please have mercy on those humans. Leave them alone. This is the two-state solution. Leave them alone. Allow them to live. Allow them to be sovereign over themselves. It is so inhumane to tell us you cannot have a two-state solution. It's like telling us you cannot be sovereign over your own life. It's like saying to yourself, to your friend, you cannot have your own destiny and decide for it. Please hear yourself, Rafi. Hear how I'm hearing you. I hope how others are hearing you. You're a beautiful man with a lot of beautiful heart, and I'm not saying it to bribe you now emotionally. But it's so sad with all of this deep philosophy. You're telling me, but what about my cousin? Well, but he's not doing anything. Where's your care about the people who are being killed for nothing? Those are being kicked out for nothing because and this person's giving their place. Even if he didn't mean to kick them out, doesn't matter his intention. He's collaborating with crime. And the moment he knows it, he needs to be responsible to leave. At least, or apologize for it, or compensate for it right away, not stay because he's peaceful and nice and computer engineer. What the heck? Sorry, I'm saying emotionally, I'm not shouting at you, but you understand the emotions where they're coming from.
I understand.
So this is where I'm a bit disappointed by you as a beautiful man, as a beautiful human.
I don't know if we'll ever come to an agreement. I don't know if I'll convince you. But so I would say that this person, if he's not living on somebody's private property, he's not so much different than me living in West Jerusalem. I'm not living in someone's private property either. I'm just a Jew living in the land, not in somebody's house, not in somebody's private house. And the fact that someone in Ramallah doesn't have the same rights as me is he needs to have more rights. You know, if we need to have one government so that we all have equality, so let's do that. If the problem is that he doesn't have rights, if I need to remove all the Jews away from him in order for him to have rights, that's, you know, that doesn't seem like a reasonable solution here. If the problem is,
but why are you saying all the Jews? Again, you're using terms and you're minimizing what I'm presenting and you're making it sound very shallow, and that's sad. That's not nice.
Yeah. No, it's
We're
not.
speaking about people
from the West Bank.
It's not even all the Jews in the West Bank. Who knows? It's not necessarily all of them. Those who are causing the most direct suffering, such as in Bil'in, such as in other villages, the settlers that are causing the most urgent death conflict daily. They're riding over children.
Like you're talking about a settler who's committing a crime against a Palestinian?
Daily, yes, those settlers.
The senator, I put him in jail. I don't just like that. That's not even a question.
But
you're
I'm saying
someone who's burning an olive tree or someone who's throwing a rock. Anybody who's doing violence to anyone else should be.
But that's the life of many settlers, brother, in the West Bank.
I don't necessarily buy
not
that.
All. Again, I
think it's. I mean, I just don't know any settlers personally to behave like that. I mean, I know so.
Sure.
Every Jew I know.
And if I tell you I know, would it help? Whether I know or don't know, it doesn't matter. It's reality. It's not responsible to say I don't know. Rafi, wait a second. It's not responsible to say I don't know. And second, to say to remove every Jew. I am now in that. You're saying private. You're using words. 1 second. Public land is not Israel's land. Public land is supposed to be Palestinian land. But even if we don't want to put Palestinian or Israeli, it's not Israel at least. So nobody has the right to go there if they're Israeli, and they're claiming that it's Israel. They're making a claim that's provocative and deleting our history and our present, which is which is unloving to say the least, which is hateful, which is inhuman, which is selfish, which is exclusive and excluding, which is removing the other. All of those terms. It is inhumane what Israelis and settlers.
I don't agree that if I call someplace Israel, if I say Ramallah is in Israel, I'm deleting you. I don't mind if you say Katamon is part of Palestine. That doesn't delete me. I live in Katamon.
It depends on the way you say it. If you tell me all of this country is Israel only, yes, you're deleting me. If you're saying, oh, this also was historic Israel, maybe it's okay. If you say this is Palestine and Israel together, maybe it's okay. If you're saying this is only Israel, Ramallah is Israel, depending on the context, yes.
From my perspective, I call the country Israel, and I respect that you call it Palestine. It's the same. It's just in our culture, that's how we refer to the land. I don't
But
see
this
why
is not
that's
only culture. When you refer to a place that's mainly Palestinian and you call it, it's like saying in Germany, like a hill in Germany, that's Israel. Listen, this is another discussion. We'll not go to it because we're almost 1 hour 45 minutes. The main thing I'm saying, Rafi, you cannot say public land versus private land. Anybody is, at least I would say, in the most urgent, emergent cause or trigger at least of severe issue and conflict continuation and expansion of settlement, colonization, control, occupation, and destruction of human future, Palestinian human future and life, should at least, as a gesture of love and humanity, leave the place and respectfully go by his own will. If he's a responsible human with ethics, if he's ethical at all, go to any place, rent, and live happily ever after, without having to cause and promote. You are justifying the presence of settlers, and you're protecting the presence of settlers, even if it causes all the suffering or against the weaker party. And this is completely immoral, and which I am
right.
deeply disappointed. Of course, it's okay, but I'm completely disappointed by this concept and this approach that you have. But it's completely immoral and inhumane of you to believe in this way, in my humble opinion. But that's up to
Sure.
you, and that's why we're here in this discussion
Okay, I
and
mean,
debate.
I'll just try to play it out and play out the scenario. So a Jew lives in Efrat. Let's say it's a settlement that has, I don't know, 20,000 Jewish people, and he leaves his house. What's he going to do with that house? He's going to sell it to a Palestinian? He's going to put it on the market, and who's going to buy it? Another Jew. He haven't changed anything. So what is he going to do? He's just going to leave it,
Rafi, I
or he's
disagree.
going to
I
abandon it
disagree.
and stop living there. Who's going to pay him to buy a new
I
apartment?
disagree with your shallow, pragmatic response. It's very shallow. Today, if I sell my house as a gesture of human rights for let's say I'm an Israeli, and this was a Palestinian house, or it's causing issues with the Palestinians, and I sell it and I say it as a gesture, and I make it explicitly, openly, publicly. I say I sold it for this, even if, whether regardless to who it goes
So he
to.
sold to another
This
Jew.
man, wait a second, this man has joined the army for peace. He's seen respectfully. His gesture can inspire other Jews to do the same. Now, those small details of where the house will go, sorry, again, you're focused on the building rather than the lives. You're focused on the building rather than the human conflict that we want to solve. If a Jew does that, it's way more respectable, as opposed to Yishai, who's so proud to be racist and saying this is only, even when if you live with us, you can be in the second class or like a resident only, not. And he's using some biblical scriptures out of context. Messy. This is how many settlers' ideology
Obviously, I
is.
wouldn't
I'm not
necessarily
saying it's
agree with
yours.
that. But what I'm saying is, I mean, you don't see that I'm being in favor of peace by saying it's not. This two states is just never going to happen, and we can have Israelis for peace, but you'd have to go the direction of living together as equals. I don't think you're going to get Israelis to say, I'm going to make this group of Israelis that's 15% of Israelis, like one in six of us, we're going to decide you're the scapegoat, you're the problem, and you all need to abandon your homes. And then it's an unrealistic expectation of let alone of me, but of my society that I'm coming from. It's just never going to happen. But what you can do, you can have people that are be pro peace and have an alternative vision for how to do it, and say, forget about trying to convince these people to leave their houses, that they're the source of the problem. I don't see them as the source. The problem is you have soldiers running this protection for them because they don't have equality to the people they live next to. So give equality to everyone they live next to and remove the soldiers. No checkpoints, no people with guns, and then everyone can live like a decent human being. Someone who needs compensate them. Problem solved. That's a solution.
But you're
saying,
speaking in an ideal world, Rafi.
That's where I want that. That's what I'm offering. I'm not going to try to.
But I don't disagree with you. You know this.
Because it's not going to happen. You believe it's going to happen.
I don't disagree with you. I just don't believe. You're there? Yeah.
I'm here.
I don't disagree. Brother, the philosophy is idealistic. And you're using words pragmatic versus idealism. What do you mean? Convincing. Who said we need to convince people to leave their houses? Of course, I said it and I say it in public. Unfortunately, I say it almost with tears. My hope for the solution of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is not held in the conscience of my enemy. With all due respect to you, Rafi, and I'm not saying you personally is my enemy, but you represent. It's not in the Israeli settler conscience suddenly. My hope of solving is in my own people awakening and an internal revolution. Yet I still will speak to your brain and to your conscience and to your mind and to your heart. Because I love you as a human, because Jesus who taught me love to my enemies, because love is the only means of bringing hope. But first hope to me. Love awakens me. Love revives me as the victim, brings me identity, and then I can fight for it healthily, non-violently, and peacefully instead of all the other means that destroys more. So what I'm trying to say here is the following. There's nothing about convincing people, and they are not the scapegoats. All Israelis are responsible. There's different responsibilities. We agreed responsibility is not equal. They are not worse or better. But there is people at the more severe, they are in the front line of war, as we say. People are on the back. So somebody like Bennett is in the very back, seated like on a throne. But somebody in the very front, like an 18-year-old child soldier, defending another 18-year-old criminal settler who's hitting and following and throwing stones at a child going to school, is in the front line. And those people need to be stopped by the ones who are in the back lines in different ways. All the Israeli community, if it's a dream that they awaken to their conscience, they need to awaken themselves to work towards that, not to demonize settlers more or less. It's understanding that they are more responsible, maybe in certain aspects, less responsible in certain others, and so on and so forth. And this is the awakening all Israelis together. Let's stop the conflict. Let's stop settlements. Let's stop this. Let's stop this. Let's stop this. Israel has been very explicit. You're saying they don't know what they want? Well, they've been very explicit about what they want throughout history and negotiation. We don't want a Palestinian state. They said it explicitly. They want to continue building settlements. No to stopping and expansion to start. They were super explicit about, particularly this one. They don't want to divide Jerusalem. Super explicit. There is nothing that's not explicit of what you're claiming, unfortunately. To claim that Israel doesn't know what they want. Although I'm okay. I'm telling you, okay. They really know, at least, they really know, one second, they really know what they don't want. They don't want Palestine. They don't want Palestinians. They don't want settlements to stop. They really know what they don't want. Maybe they don't know exactly what they want. Maybe they want to become, they want Jordan and Syria and Egypt maybe all to become Israel. No, maybe they don't know this. But what they really know is what they don't want. They don't want us. They don't want us. Like he said in the beginning, they didn't humanize us. They want to keep terrorizing us, kicking us out, killing us, to eventually we are removed naturally by, like they say, the herd immunity. So we become, all Corona kind of. So we suddenly disappear. So this is what they don't want. And your job as Rafi, I believe, because you have a beautiful heart, is to tell your government, your people, whoever is like this at least, to tell me not all again, that this is what they need to do. The focus is to change Israeli policy, not keeping settlers or defending whether settlers are there. That's not the main thing, brother. The main thing is not settlers staying or leaving. The main thing is Palestinians stopping to be suffering as a weaker party. Then the problem is solved. Then we can freely go, move, there's no checkpoint, we're not abused, we can freely intermarry instead of being abused in the institution, the very institution of love and family. Then we can travel freely, have equal rights, citizenship, medical insurance to everybody, not only to some people and some others not. And so on and so forth. We can live in a house that will not be demolished in a few days, a few months, a few decades. This is what I think is the solution. I pissed you off, obviously, but yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I don't know how I can square the circle here. I would
Great.
say that
We can end, or you can speak whatever you want. I want to
sure.
hear you also. So
I
thank you
think
for listening.
that the direction that I would try to convince people is not in favor of a separation solution, because I don't think that will come. So I don't think that's a good use of my time. Although I understand that the issues of suffering from various settlements, and or I think anybody who is who is attacking Palestinians as an individual, or any soldier or any individual person that's violating the law, obviously should be prosecuted. That's for certain. But I think the long term, the way to solve this problem is through an equal rights solution. I don't see it happening through a solution of separation, and I don't necessarily see it. I think it does have to come through the hearts of the Israeli people, similar to there was international pressure in South Africa, but ultimately the people of South Africa went to a referendum and voted to end apartheid. I mean, that's what ended apartheid. The civilians went to vote, and they passed that legislation. And in the United States, they had the Civil Rights Act. Martin Luther King, he did march on Washington along with white people and with Jewish people. The black people marched in Washington, but ultimately the government passed the Civil Rights Act. So that was the government that was voted for by the average American. So ultimately the Israelis will have to vote to end this one way or another, and you'll have to convince them to do it. I think the easiest way to convince them is to just say, let's all live here with equal rights, instead of promoting the solution as continuing the psychological problem, the idea that you need to be separated, that we need to have a Jewish state that's 80% Jewish in order for us to solve our problems, because we can't live with other people, because we can't have equality. To just say you need to move to a new way of looking at the world, and we need to live with dignity, with equality, with the people who actually live in our country. And it also doesn't require uprooting anybody necessarily. It requires implementation of equal rights, which is, I think, is the best solution. And I don't think it's utopian. I think the other one at this point is becoming more, the two-state solution is equally utopian. It's also, there's not a majority support behind it. I don't see it happening. I really believe that the end of this conflict will be a one-state equal rights solution. I don't know when it will be. It'll be something like South Africa, or something like equal rights for African Americans in the United States. It'll be a vote for civil rights for all, and that'll be the end of the conflict. So that's just my belief of how it's going to play out. Obviously, if there was a way to make two-state solution and there was a referendum for it tomorrow, and it would really work, and it would really be safely done and ethically done, I would of course vote yes. I have a vision. My vision is that it's going to go the other direction, which I think is also a reasonable way for it to end. A civil rights solution is a perfectly ethical solution, in my view.
Beautiful, actually, what you're saying. You know my opinion about that.
Sure.
That's a dream. Yeah, I just think that the two-state solution can still be implemented, even temporarily, in many ways. That doesn't
Sure.
have to be, I would call it, hard, as in concrete border,
Sure.
concrete.
You could find some middle ground. I mean, any version of the two-state solution that was ethical and was, minimized the amount of suffering to everyone, and could be done safely.
I think it will be a beautiful transition. It can be temporarily, and it can really, which is supposedly what also, and it can be temporarily, and it can be relief, and can build a bit of human trust between the two people, and then we can dream together after a few decades, after a season of no killing, almost none.
Yeah.
Like something like 0.1%. Like something that would be really rare. And
I think if we implemented a two-state solution, I don't think it would become a one state. I think it would stay. I think if you pulled off two states, it would. That's just how I see. Historically, if you make two countries, they end up staying.
So tell me more about this. Why do you see it that it will not become?
That it'll become. if you made two states by evacuating a large percentage of people behind some line, they're not necessarily going to want to come back. They're not gonna. They're gonna move on with their lives. They'll be resettled somewhere. They'll suffer, and
Maybe
they'll
there
build a
would
new
be
life
no
somewhere.
evacuation.
And then what? If there
Maybe
was
there
no
would be
evacuation, if you made it, fine. If you made two states and all of the Israelis who lived behind the line became citizens of Palestine, and Jerusalem was a shared capital, in that version, okay, it would become one country eventually, because then you have still a connection. If you evacuated, there would be no motivation to go back. Once it was done, it was done. It would be painful. People would suffer, and they would move on. They would get a new house. Their kids would go to a new school. They'd find a new job, and they would say, "Why am I going to move back there and have, we made a country that's 80% Jewish? They're not going to go change it back for no reason." Israelis wouldn't want to include Gaza in their country because, why? We left Gaza. If they left the West Bank, they wouldn't come back. They wouldn't want to. If you left them there, then they would want. Then it would become one country, 100%.
Rafi, not to tease you harshly, but I wish this is right, because the Jews even left many places of their comfort where there was no persecution to simply come here. And I wish they said, well, we're Saturday, we have the children, we have school. Why would we go to a place 2,000 years ago that we were kicked out? So
no, they were the vast majority. I mean, maybe that's our disagreement about this. The vast majority of Jews who came here are not like me. They came here because they were being persecuted from some other 100%. That was more than 90% of Israeli Jews who migrated in the whole history of Zionism came here as a result of ethnic cleansing from somewhere else. All the Jews came from Iraq.
We'll talk about
Morocco.
this later.
That's a reality. The Jews from Germany.
You believe it's a reality?
There's a small percentage. Jews who came from America, from England, from a few places were not being persecuted. There's a few American Jews who they talk like me and stuff. You see them. We're easygoing because we left America. We were fine there. We came here because it's cool. It's Middle Eastern. There's nice weather. It's interesting culture. And then we got here and we realized there's a big mess here. But I wasn't running away from persecution. But the vast majority of people who came here, they were. That's why they're here. They weren't.
So you're telling me the Jewish people have been doing Aliyah, let's say, at least since the 80s and 70s and 90s, and today they're all suffering, facing persecution around the world?
No. Most of them came before that. So they came in.
No, but I'm saying about even the new ones.
No. So you had, but there's not a lot. It's 30,000. There have been 3.8 million people who've made Aliyah since the Balfour Declaration. 3.8 million. That we have on average maybe 25,000 people. So in the last 20 years, it's a fraction of that.
What do you mean 3.8 million? Where did you get
3.8 million Jews? You can look it up on Wikipedia.
Yeah, but
3.8 million Jews.
Where were they on the statistics?
Since 1917, since the Balfour Declaration.
So how come they were only 600,000 by 1948? Which years are you talking about?
No. They came here. In 1950, 52, you doubled the population, and by 1956, you had doubled the population. They came from all the Arab countries.
Sorry to interrupt. And those they came out of suffering?
The ones from the Arab countries, yes, they came here. There was a massacre in Iraq. There were massacres in Morocco. Yes.
Right. By some Zionists. You're right. But continue anyway. So some came from Arab countries because they were kicked out. I understand that. But
okay,
that's not suffering. That's a reaction. But anyway,
that was ethnic cleansing. It's a crime against humanity. They were massacred. The way they got them out is they murdered a bunch of them, and they scared them, and they packed their bags and left. And they weren't allowed to take their properties, and they stripped them their citizenship. It was a reaction. Fine, that's war. It was a war between the Arab ethnic group against the Jews, and these were victims of ethnic cleansing. So that was another group of Jews, and then they would have
another discussion. But anyway, continue. So the Jews who came from there were 800,000 from the Arab states. So that makes another how much? And then the rest who came after the 50s, they were suffering from which country? Because you said 3.8 million.
They were under persecution under the Russians. under the Soviet Union. When the former Soviet Union fell, I had another 800 or so thousand people who came here because they were fleeing. They were being persecuted. They weren't allowed to be Jewish. You couldn't have go to a synagogue. You couldn't express Jewish culture. So
in Soviet Union.
Soviet Union. I could find all the statistics. After you had a bunch of Jews who were victims of the Holocaust who came here after, who were living in refugee camps post the Holocaust, who came here after. So it's the majority of people who came here were suffering from some type of persecution. That's how you get to the final. I could give you exact numbers. I'm good at numbers. I'll find it. But that's your case.
It's good to ask you. It's good to ask. I mean, it opens a lot of discussion, but of course, but thank you for letting me know. Okay, so anyway, thank you, Rafi. Of course, we have to finish, but it's nice talking to you, although it can get serious together in many ways. So yeah. I mean.
So I think we should wrap up. Adar said he's getting tired. We'll.
Yeah, I'm saying that's finished. Yeah. I'm thanking you.
Yeah. But it was always a pleasure talking to you. We'll. We both live in Jerusalem. We could come, have coffee sometime, hang out, continue this in live.
Of course. Okay, we didn't plan on anybody asking questions today or something, right?
No, it's getting a bit late. I say we'll leave it for a different time. If anybody's got a final question for one of us, feel free.
I didn't see any. I didn't look. So.
Z asked me, can I go to H1 or H2 Hebron since you're an Israeli citizen? I can go to H2, not H1. H1 is under Palestinian Authority. I need a permit to go to H2. To H1. For H2, I'm allowed to as an Israeli citizen. That's correct. It's considered like Area C, H2. It's under Israeli military. I've been there once, I think, or maybe I went once for one of these. They're Parshat Chayesar, the Parsha where the in Jewish culture we read a portion of the Bible every week. So there's a portion where Abraham buys the tomb of the patriarchs from the Hittites, wherever it is, and so when we read that, it's customary to go there for spend the weekend there, and the Jews would go to sort of on a pilgrimage. So I've done that once in Hebron. Somebody asked about that. Anybody have a question maybe for Malkon?
I don't know. I'm looking. It's a lot of comments. So you take over this. Do you see any questions?
No, I see more like comments. Jews aren't allowed in Palestine, but they're allowed in Israel. Wow. I don't know. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't know where you think you could say I live in Palestine. What's the difference? But I'm not allowed to go to Palestinian. You can go all over except H1 Hebron. No, I cannot go to areas A or B. The area is controlled by the Palestinian Authority. I need a permit from the Israeli military in order to go there. And I cannot go to Gaza, obviously. But the rest of the country, I'm allowed to go, and I can go to Area C of the West Bank, legal under Israeli law, without a permit. So certain places like Beit Jala or some neighborhoods.
So Rafi technically is telling you guys raw law, but it doesn't really apply like this. So Israelis can go wherever they want. Gaza, nobody is allowed. Neither Palestinians nor Israelis, except special people like journalists. But Israelis can go wherever they want.
Yeah, I've gone to Palestine, without a permit.
Because that lack of freedom of movement applies against us, not against Israelis. So.
But you
Just
can
for
get in
people to
trouble.
know.
Like if they catch you going there, they give you a hard time.
No, not if they catch you. Only if you get in trouble with actual Palestinians there, and then you get into police stuff, and then they ask you, why did you get to the West Bank? But I have
Yeah.
friends all the time
All
coming
right.
with me.
It's not advised.
Yes, yes. But it's not like they will prevent you if they see you're Jewish. Okay. You tell me if there's
Okay, I think
anything
we
else
wrap it
last.
up. Now you want to pop back on?
Yes, no, I want to thank you actually for
Hey, what's up, guys?
What's up,
even
Adar?
Adar
I
came.
see your camera.
Yeah, I
Adar,
know.
good morning.
I'm not wearing a shirt. I'm
That's
But
all
I'm
people
about.
right.
want to see
I'm not
Adar.
that
People want to
sensitive,
see
but
you.
you
That's
No,
know,
why.
look.
I don't know how YouTube feels.
Here's the thing. Normally, I'm awake at these hours, well awake. But tomorrow is Norman Finkelstein, and I'm trying to be well rested before my conversation with him. You know, this is
Say hi to
probably
Norman
the most
Finkelstein.
intimidating interview I've given. You know, so I want to be on my A game.
Sure.
And I should have, Rafi. What I should have done is given you the admin login so you could end the stream on your own. But
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
we
anyways,
just thought of
it's getting
ending.
late here. Also,
yeah,
I
look,
gotta go.
if we need a round four, we need a round four. You know, and then let me know and we'll set it up. Great
We'll
convo,
come. We'll
friends,
come
and
hang out
yes,
again.
look, whoever
So
wants, we could
last,
do an after party. Whoever wants, we could do an after party in Discord. I don't know if either of you want to continue chatting, but it seems like the chat is very lively. A lot of toxicity in the chat this evening. I saw, but
Yeah,
that's okay.
I haven't been moderating
We
it
let it
lately.
slide. We let it slide.
so
I'll drop
Adar,
I'll drop the Discord link.
Somebody
after
asked
your
if we learn
permission.
Hebrew and Arabic. Malkon, you think you should learn Hebrew?
Yeah, I'll just say something before that. And guys, I said it before, whoever was here, people who say I'm lying or attacking my person, please be a human, at least first, before you join something like this. If you heard me and Rafi, we didn't say anything far from this language. So at least just be more ethical. You don't need to attack my person to be a human. Yeah, we can disagree and respect that we
Sure.
disagree. And I don't need to attack you either. Okay? Even when I said to Rafi I'm disappointed by his concepts, I didn't say, he's lying or. So thanks.
Yeah, no.
Anyway, thank
Look,
you for.
here's the thing. Personal attacks are the easiest form of attacks because it doesn't require the person to engage with you on the merit of your ideas. So, you know, it's the lowest form of dialogue. If anything, we should probably empathize with people who can't do anything but personal attacks because they probably lack. And I say this like with a heavy heart, but they probably, to a certain extent, lack the intellectual capability to engage on ideas, so they need to attack. So we should really be more sympathetic to people who are just here engaging in personal attacks. They're probably not capable of much else. So, you know. But in all reality, I say that in jest because we should have standards. I get it. Attacks are easy; they're the easiest form of dialogue. But try to elevate your level, even if it's hard. You got this.
Yes,
Anyways,
Adam. It's just important for me to tell people this. I know you are handling this right. Not about me taking it personally, of course. It's about an attitude. When people engage in such things, we need just an ethical approach, even if people are not intellectually capable or something. I believe we can aspire together to tell each other nicely and beautifully. And as I believe in love and the power of love, we can show love through our words and through our vibe and voice of tone. Anyway, thank you for everybody who tried to attack me or whatever, unintentionally or intentionally. I don't see you as less of a beautiful human.
hey, amen, brother. Good having you here. Great having you here too, Rafi. And yeah,
It was a
whoever wants,
pleasure. It was always fun.
hop in the lounge
Yeah,
for the
hop in
after
Discord.
party.
Anybody's got any more questions? I'll be
Yeah,
happy to
we'll
answer.
take it to the lounge. Cool. Bye,
Adar,
everybody.
I forgot how to get to the after party.
Rafi will escort you there.
I'll send you a link.
Okay, sure.
Awesome.
I might come shortly.